Hello. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Hello, hello. Hi, Herman. I see you here. We'll wait a little bit, and I'll get started with everybody. If you're here, I hope that you created YouTube account so that you can interact with me. Hi, Claudia. I haven't forgotten to reply to your email. I will do it today. Hi, Jan. Yay! Jerry. Hey, Jerry. You guys don't know this, but Jerry and I go way back. We've known each other, I don't know, like 17 years now. And I worked with her son a lot. Danny is an amazing musician and composer. Hey, Jerry. All right. Cool. So today, I'm going to answer a bunch of questions for you that you might have had while you were reading this book. I'm going to demonstrate some of, or all. I'll go through them all unless somebody says that don't bother with that one, then I won't. But I want to make sure that, as much as I can convey over the written word, it's a lot better to demonstrate, right? So, okay. Herman's here. What is that? What is that hand gesture you're showing me, Herman? Hi, Anna. Am I small in the screen? What are you showing me with their hand? Hi, Tuan. Oh my goodness, all the great people are here. Okay, so I made some notes that I'm gonna talk about. First, I want to talk about the journal. Okay, let me put my notes here. I know that the journal seems like it takes time that you'd rather spend practicing, and it might seem tedious. But there's like a really strong psychological, like human, underlying reason for it. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Donna. So by journaling, and the journal entries are really, really, really small. They're not meant to be like, searching the soul kind of thing. So I kept them small because I want your thoughts to be very concise, and I want your goals to be really targeted and pretty small, like I talk about in the book. But the underlying reason for keeping the journal in general is that we human beings tend to have habitual thoughts. Okay, these are thoughts we don't even notice anymore just because they're always in our thought system. Think of it like a pattern that you've just kind of learned and you do it. And by having to write down, exactly like, how do I feel? What am I working on? How well did I do? What did I use to get to my intended goal? And then at the very end, wrapping up by saying like, I reached my goals. Here's what I want to do the next week or the next time that I practice. By doing this, you're actually interrupting the flow of your habitual thought. If you've been playing piano for a while, or even if you're just starting out, it doesn't matter. You still have habitual thoughts about yourself, about how you learn. Like you might have said the sentence like, oh yeah, I don't do that sort of thing in whatever context. Well, how do you know you don't do that sort of thing? It's because you're looking at your past, right? But when you're trying to learn something new, the whole point of learning something new is to do something that you haven't done before. So looking back at how you are, in air quotes, doesn't really serve the purpose. I read something that was really helpful. It's like if you have a bucket of muddy water, right? Muddy water would represent here our habitual thought. And mud is not bad. Mud can be good. But if we have a bucket of muddy water and we drip in clear water, it's going to take a while before that muddy water gets replaced by clear water. But if we can just empty that bucket right from the beginning and drip in the clean water, it's a lot quicker process. And so when you're learning to play the piano and you keep the journal, you're emptying that bucket of water, of whatever it is that you think about yourself, your picture of who you are, and you're dripping in the clean water. So you're going to reach your goals faster. And that's the whole point, right? We don't take up piano so that we can practice. We take up piano so we can play, as I say in the book, and practicing is how you get there. So if you have bought the journal, even if you haven't, you can just write it on your own in a notebook. Be sure to use it. Okay, don't do it every single time if it really bothers you, but most of the time, at least every other time, you will notice if you do this for a few months that your thought processes have changed without even intentionally trying to. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to check in with you guys. All right. Hi, Ken. So, what I just said, does that make sense about the journal? So that it's not just a time waster or just another thing to do. It seems like a simple thing, but it's like foundational in how well you do. Okay? All right. So, that being said, okay, one other thing I wanted to say is sometimes when you're looking at a practice step or your teacher tells you to do something, and I'm always going to use this one particular example because it's the perfect one from the Karate Kid, whether it's the original one or the one that was remade, or there was that Netflix show which was awesome. All right, so when the student is being taught certain motions, they are questioning it usually. Like, that's how the story goes. I'm questioning it. Why do I need to do this? This doesn't look like the thing that I want to achieve, right? And then at the end, the lesson always is, well, the thing that you learned that you didn't understand is actually the thing that's going to lead you to what you wanted. So you don't need to understand every aspect of a thing in order to do it and in order for it to help you. So if you're looking through my practice steps and you see something and you're like, I don't know, that makes no sense. I'm not the kind of person who does this thing. Try it for a while. The whole point of you getting the book was to get a different perspective, right? So if you're just going to go by what seems like it would work for you, you're kind of leaving money on the table. If you consider playing the piano money, you're just leaving it there. Go ahead and pick it up. Try it for a while. And then you can see where you might use it, or like, I will never do that, that sort of thing. For example, if you might have a hearing difficulty, probably you're never going to do the background noise because that doesn't make sense in your particular situation. But, most of the practice steps, even if they don't seem like why, I did my best to explain. But even if you're kind of hesitant, I invite you to try it for a while and give it a chance to work its magic, okay? So, all right. Claudia, it gives you a sense of accomplishment. Yeah. So, since there is a delay and what you're hearing and what I'm seeing are kind of a little bit far apart in time, it would really help everybody as well as myself that when you write a comment, you'd be a little bit more specific about what you're referring to, just because of the time delay. If we were all in a room together, it'd be totally awesome to just say stuff, but it doesn't work that way online. Okay, so I know, Claudia, you had a question in one of our lessons that I want to talk about first. And then as you, everybody else who's here, looks like there's 10 people here. As you have questions, just type them in as clearly as you can, so that I will answer them for you. So Claudia's question during one of her lessons was, how do you know when you've learned a piece, when it's time to move on? And you might have had that same question. There's not one right answer. It all depends on a few factors. The first factor is, why are you learning that piece? Sometimes you learn a piece because it's a tool that you're using to get better at playing, right? Maybe you're working on your arpeggio playing and there's a particular piece that's not all that exciting, but it really involves a lot of arpeggios and it will help you to kind of climb that part of the ladder. So you learn it. And you might say, well, I've already got the movements down. I've got it as good as I want to get it. I never want to really perform it or play it for myself. I've gotten what I wanted out of it. I can play the arpeggios clearly with forethought and control. I'm good. Moving on. Never need to hear it again. If you're learning a piece that is a little bit beyond your current level, and you're using it kind of like a stepping stone, to get to the next level of playing, you probably, depending on the piece, and you want to keep it in your repertoire, you probably will not master it in the same way that like a virtuoso pianist would play it. You probably won't do that since it's a little bit above your level right now. But you can get it as good as you can get it. You might say, I'm fine with not playing it as fast as, certain famous pianists. I'm fine with playing it at my level. I'm okay if I make a few mistakes here and there. By the way, everybody makes mistakes, even on stage. That's okay. If you listen to my interview with Emmeline on the podcast, which is now up on my website, she uses something really interesting. Emmeline is a local musician here in Dallas and a teacher, and she's getting her doctorate degree. So she kind of knows what she's talking about. When students tell her that they made mistakes in a piece, she refocuses their attention and she says, look at how many notes are in this piece. And you got the majority of them right. I don't know the statistics about baseball, but I did remember reading, I don't know anything about sports. I did remember reading that even like the best baseball players, they only hit a certain very small percentage of home runs of all the times that they attempt to hit the ball. And that's like the best of the best of the best, right? So this goes across all different kinds of skills. You're not a robot. Nobody's a robot. Nobody really wants to hear a robot play. We want to get the human aspect of it. So you might say, okay, I'm fine with playing this piece, not as fast as probably it should go. I'm okay with making some mistakes. I feel in control of it as much as I do want to, and it feels really good to play. And it's not perfect. Then you're done with it. You can put it on your repertoire sheet. If you want to do a concert that's going to be broadcast around the world, then your goals are going to be a little bit different. Okay, then you're going to want to work on that piece in a very different light, which we're not going to talk about here, unless one of you wants to do a worldwide live concert. Okay, so you decide when you and your teacher decide when you have learned the piece enough. You don't even have to learn a whole piece. You might really like one part of the piece. Okay, like let's say you're doing Fur-Elise, and you just want to do the first part, that part. And you ended, and you feel great. Fine, you're done with the piece. Put it on your repertoire and then just play it for pleasure. Does that answer your question, Claudia? +1. In the video, it is recommended that each step is repeated 3 times. In the book, it seems that 1 time is enough. Hi, Vera. So glad you can join us. Okay, Jan, that's a really great question. Again, so I don't want you to look at the 3-coin game like it's the law. You could do 3 coins, you could do 4 coins, you could do 5 coins. Heck, you could do 10 coins. And so I kept that open in the book because then if you notice, like in the sheets that you got that you can download, by the way, make sure you download all the stuff that's in that like course. The book is inside a course, and there's a whole bunch of things to download. So I kept it as inferring 1, Jan, because if you look at the practice steps, like the record, like do this, that, and that if you're trying to learn a piece, then you combine it. You combine the +1 with the 3-coin game. Does that make sense? So if I were to say do +1 3 times, that would be 2 practice steps. +1 is just 1 practice step. 3-coin game is another practice step. So you combine them together. You can combine lots of them. For example, you could do +1 with the 3-coin game. You could do +1 with your eyes closed. You could do +1 with the 3-coin game and your eyes closed. You could do +1 with 3-coin game, eyes closed, background noise. There's a bunch of stuff you can combine. And so I made the practice steps themselves just like really pure and simple. And then you decide how you want to put them together in your practice session. You're welcome, Claudia. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody? The practice steps are very simple and not meant to encompass a practice session, what you would do in a practice session. Okay? So I'll wait a second because there's a delay and see if there's any other questions. And then I'm going to move on and start talking about the practice steps. And I will drink some coffee. Herman, I've never found a practice step that I can get away with only one pass. Yeah. And by the way, on different practice days, or even different practice sessions on the same day, it's because we're human, you're going to notice different things. Sometimes you make a mistake you never made before, and you're like, what was that? Maybe your fingers just slipped, or maybe there was a weakness there that you hadn't realized until maybe somebody was watching you play. And then that's where it's like when you're performing or when you're recording or, when you're with your teacher, think of that as like an X-ray or a magnifying glass or something like that really shows you what's going on. Usually it's showing you something that's already there. Every once in a while, and it's rare, it'll just be a fluke. But usually you want to take it seriously. Don't say like, oh, I can't play for people, I get so nervous. Okay, well, that's something you can work on, right? I'm not saying you have to play for people, but if you want to, Okay, makes perfect sense. Anna, something I would not think of doing, like Sing It Baby. I had the rhythm wrong in one part. Singing it is not, but Maureen, okay. Yes, it's great to have somebody practice. Okay, so Anna is talking about our last lesson. She had learned one of my pieces, Daisy, I Will Never Forget You, and she was playing it really well, except there was one place where the rhythm was off. And because I wrote that piece for beginner level pianists, or, it's an easier piece, I made a lot of repetitions of rhythms and things like that. And so when she got the rhythm wrong in one place, it was wrong in all the places. So I had to call her attention to it. And we did Sing It Baby, which I'm going to do for you today. And at first she was really hesitant, just like everybody else. Like, I'm not saying you're not a special, special, beautiful snowflake, because we all are. But we all tend to have the same, like, insecurities. We'll all say like, oh, I'm not a singer. That's not the point of this practice step, is not to sing. It's to process those messages of the rhythm and the pitch in your inner ear, in your audiation, like I talk about in the book, and then to have it come out of your mouth. That is such a powerful practice step. And we're not even doing this, It's something you can do away from the piano. If you're taking a trip or you're stuck somewhere, waiting room or something, if you have your music with you, you can just kind of da-da-da-da-da-da-da, just kind of sing it to yourself. And I gave Claudia, an extra special assignment to. I asked her to sing what we were singing as she was in a supermarket passing by someone. It's a really great way to start taking away the pressure of performing. Is just to like do silly things like that where you are making music in a very low, no pressure situation, right? So if you're walking by someone in the supermarket and you're pushing your cart and you just go da 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 da, they're not gonna care. They're probably not even listening, but it's a way for you to perform in public. And it's, and you get used to stuff, right? It's like the first time you got in the car, nerves. Now you're in the car, you're hopefully not texting, but you're doing all kinds of stuff and you don't even think about it. It's because you got used to that. So if you want to get used to playing the piano and not feeling pressure, do silly things like that. In my video where I talk about stage fright, I tell you something that I did a long time ago, I was part of this like leadership program where I had to create a community project from scratch. I had to figure out what it was. I had to get people to volunteer for it, and I had to get companies to also, pitch in. And you might think that I'm not shy, but I had a really hard time before this particular project with speaking up. And I walked into the Home Depot in Hollywood, California on a Saturday. There was people everywhere. And, little Marina's like, can I speak with the manager? I was shaking in the parking lot before I went in, just asking for some like donations, because I was doing this thing called Make a Joyful Noise, which was a community project for children to take scraps of whatever and to make instruments out of them. And so I wanted Home Depot to donate stuff. So that had nothing to do with performing per se, but it really helped me a lot in overcoming so many obstacles of what of how I thought people were perceiving me, of how nervous I was about outcomes and things like that. So that is to say that you can get better as a pianist by doing things that have really nothing to do with piano. Okay, it's all mindset. Get with the program, Claudia. Yeah, Claudia, go do it. In fact, I give that assignment to all of you. Sing to people as you pass by them. I mean, don't be creepy about it. Don't sing to them like that, but just kind of sing. Or go ask someone for something they're going to say no to, and be okay with it and smile just to hear rejection. That was also one of my things that I had to work on in this program. Yeah, nobody really cares, Claudia. Really. We're all wrapped up in our own world. Okay, any other questions before I start with the practice steps? Remember that this will be available. You can come back to it and watch it and stuff like that. It's my turn. Okay, thanks, Claudia. All right, so I'm going to bring up, hold on one second. I'm using, where is it? Okay, can you all see that image on the screen? It might take a second to appear for you. I'm using Mozart Sonata, that guy, to demonstrate. Yes, there's so many things to do, right? And, for me anyway, life is about doing fun, different things and learning, and I'm sure it is for you too. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. So just keep adding layers of stuff that you can do. All right, can you all see the thing that's on the screen? And it's probably kind of small depending on what kind of screen you're looking at, but I will zoom in on it. Just want to make sure you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about make a map. If you have your book with you, you can follow along. If you don't worry about it. So the first thing is make a map. Make a map. I'm not going to go over it because obviously you have the book already. And if you haven't read it, it's okay. But basically, you don't want to jump into a piece or a song not knowing where you're going with it. Okay, you don't want to go note by note by note. This is the absolute longest, most frustrating way to learn a piece. So you want to kind of look at the whole thing. Excuse me. If you're looking at the Mozart Sonata, and classical music and pop music are slightly different in this respect. So you look at the first part, you can even see like the first, I'm going to actually enlarge it a little bit so that I can see it. I'm going to cover my face for a little bit, okay? I'm going to put it over here. So if you even look at it, you can see that it looks different from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 measures. And then the 13th measure, it's like a different picture. So the first, section is the introduction of like this piece. Not the introduction of the piece, like here's the piece, that's what I mean by introduction. Like the statement of what this piece is. And so on, right? Then we get to that next section after this. Now, it looks different. Look, now the left hand's doing stuff. So you can see that's a different section altogether. So I would say the first, I forgot how many measures. Was it 13 measures? 12 measures, sorry. 12 measures are the A section. After that starts the B section. Okay, so you would go through and you don't have to necessarily write it out on a separate sheet of paper, but on the thing it's, oops, sorry about that. But on the, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. On the sheet music itself, you can write the capital letter A at the very beginning. On measure 3, you can write capital letter B. And when, A comes back, and it will, you can write A. Or if it's slightly different, it's A prime, like a little number 1, and so on. So that as you're learning it, you can choose which section you're going to work on. You know what's the same, what's different. And this is a little different from finding like measures that are the same. We're looking at kind of chunks of the piece. If you're looking at a song, you can say, well, the chorus, every time it comes around, it kind of sounds the same way, right? Like on Hotel California, welcome to the Hotel California. That's the same every single time, right? Such a lovely place. But the verses are slightly different from one another if you're going to play them exactly, because they have different rhythmic combinations depending on the words that you use. And sometimes verses will have a change in the chord structure for added interest. That sort of thing. So for that, you can write out like, okay, intro, verse, whatever. When I was playing a lot with rock bands and I had to learn a lot of songs really, really fast, so I would make notes for myself, not like musical notes, but I would say like the title of the song, then I would say like, okay, verse, intro, and then like pre-chorus, intro, or whatever, verse again, then chorus. And then I would make note with like, okay, first verse is slightly different from second verse. How? And that way I have like a map that I don't have to memorize the whole song in order to know where we are. Okay? Hi, Regina. Hi, Diane. Yay. Okay. So, couldn't ask my question. Regina, you can ask it now, whenever you want. I'm seeing. So are we good with making a map? We understand it. We know what it means and all that. I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay. Finding the patterns is like zooming in on making a map. Okay, so finding patterns. If we're looking at this piece that I just played, let me bring it here so you can see my hands. Look at the left hand in the first measure. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, if you look at the left hand in the first measure, you've got, and then that whole thing repeats, right? So if I know that the first half of the measure is the same as the second half measure, then I can kind of free up my, like kind of like on a computer, I can free up some memory so that I'm not thinking like, okay, C, G, E, G, C, G, E. No, I'm just thinking, oh, that's a C major chord, and I'm breaking it up into an Alberti pattern. That's what this is called. And then I just repeat that. And then if I look at the next measure, the second half of the measure looks exactly like what I played in the first measure. Well, that's easy. If I look in the third measure, the second half of the third measure is the same thing as the first measure. Same thing with the fourth measure. So I know if I leave out the stuff that's different, here's what I have so far. Then I've got something, then I have something else, and I have something else, and I have this. So I've already learned a majority of the first line, and really it was because I learned the first 4-note pattern. Then I can find a thing that is similar. So if I look at the second measure, hold on, let me check in. I'm looking at a screen that doesn't show you guys. I want to make sure you're still with me. Okay. So nobody has said, wait, I don't understand. Okay. So if I look at the second measure, I can see that my thumb is still going to be on the same note as it was in the first measure. So that's something that's similar. Okay, so I know in the second measure, first half, my thumb is still going to be on the same note that it was before. So I'll put those two measures together. This is the same. This is similar because the thumb is there. And then this is the same. Looking at the third measure, I see that my fifth finger is going to be on the same note. So that's similar, right? But here I see my thumb is going to have to go out. So that's different. And then I come back to my usual stuff that I already know. So I'll put those three measures together. This is the same, similar, same, similar, same, and so on. Let me pause here and see if you guys are getting it. Okay, give me some kind of feedback to say yes, no, talk more. Yes. Okay, good. All right, next practice step is find the lookalikes. Kind of the same thing, right? So if we're looking at measures and groups of measures, measures and groups of measures, and sections of a piece and things like that. If I look at, let's see. I think it's pretty obvious from what I just said. Like, I don't think I need to go through that, but I will say there's a thing in music called a sequence. If you've studied with me, we talked about it. You may not remember. That's okay. A sequence is a musical idea that is, maybe I put it in the book. Now I've forgotten what's in the book. Is a musical idea that is repeated immediately, but it's repeated higher or lower. So if we look at the second line of this piece, we have kind of a long note and then a bunch of shorter notes, and it's just an octave scale, A. Then we repeat that, but one note lower. That's a sequence. Repeat it one note lower. Sequence. Usually 3 is the tops, but in this case, Mozart's doing 4 of them. Now the 5th one starts the same way, but it moves on. So that part is not a sequence. So if you look at the second line of this piece, and then the first measure of the third line, you can see that the picture looks very similar. It's like bum ba 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 bum ba 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 bum ba 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 bum. You know, the rhythm is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is that you're starting one note lower each time. So if you go into it knowing, hey, this is a sequence, it happens 4 times, and each time I play it, it's down one note. That is a lot easier to wrap your mind around than going, oh my goodness, what are those notes? How am I ever going to learn them? So if you can just learn the first one, and you know you're starting on an A, you're ending on an A, you're coming back to an A, it's just an octave scale. Then you say, oh, I know, the next one is just an octave scale, but it starts on G and goes to G. Of course, you'll have to work out your fingering. But in terms of learning the notes and the rhythms, this is a breeze. Oh, it's the same thing, but now I'm going F to F. Now it's the same thing, I'm going E to E. Then you say, this one is trying to trick me. It starts the same way, but I know this one's different. So you've got 4 measures, and you learn them basically for free. Okay, so let me know if that makes sense. A sequence is a repeated pattern in a piece of music. It happens like immediately repeated, not repeated somewhere else in the piece. That's not a sequence. But if you can find the sequences like that, that's a lookalike in a way, right? It's got the same rhythm, the same musical idea, it's just lower or higher than the original. Then again, you can free up your thinking process and learn it a lot faster. So give me some feedback on that. Sequence, Sequence. Okay? Okay, let's do point and say. It is a piece of cake, Anna. All right, good. Point and say. You can say the note names, you can say the rest names, you can say the chord names. That's cool. You just made an impossible looking section. Yes, Herman. That's what I'm here for. To make the impossible possible. But seriously, like, those 4 measures have a lot of notes in them. And you can imagine how frustrating it would be to have to read every single note by itself, especially if you're more on the beginner side. But if you just go like, oh man, it's just a picture that's repeated, 4 times. Right? Yeah. Thank you, Dan. All right. I'm doing point and say. So point and say note names, point and say rest, point and say chord names. I want to say one thing. 100% of my students have told me this is really hard to do, as well as the next few practice steps. So, something being hard to do just means you're not used to it yet. That's all. And the only way you're going to get used to it is by doing it. The advantages are, explained in the book. But basically, again, it's bringing your attention to the page. Your habitual thought might be, I'm not good at reading music notation. You don't even know that you're thinking that. That's just like imagine putting on a pair of glasses and just looking through them all the time. After a while, you get used to what, if they're like dark or whatever, you just kind of get used to it. You take them off and you're like, whoa, it's bright in here, right? So your habitual thoughts, you may not even be aware of. So you're thinking that, oh, I'm not good at reading sheet music for whatever reason. Maybe it was taught to you wrong, or you taught it to yourself and you didn't understand exactly the right way to do it. If you are pointing and saying the note names and the chord names and the rest names, you're actually forcing yourself to look at the situation in real time, to look at what's in front of you instead of looking through your glasses. Claudia, you stop that. So point and say note names. Basically, it's very easy. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it. See. Okay, so if you're looking at the left hand here, right? Notice that the left hand starts in treble clef. So treble clef is not typical for left hand, but it happens a lot. And bass clef happens for the right hand. So treble clef and bass clef don't tell you left hand or right hand. Usually it's the top line of the grand staff is right hand and the bottom line is left hand, but not 100% of the time. We're not going to talk about that now. But if I were pointing and saying note names in the first line here, I would start with the first note in the left hand. It's C. So I would actually put my finger on that note on the sheet music and say C out loud. Out loud is very important. You need that feedback loop of hearing yourself say it. I'm not a scientist. I can't give you all the scientific data to back it up, but I know it exists and I also know my experience. Okay, so I would point and say C, then G, E, G, C, G, E, G. All right. After a while, you start seeing that G happens so many times, you just get used to it. Okay. Like, oh, that's a G. I don't even have to think about it. If you're looking at the second line, okay, so now we've got other than just single notes. We start with an F in the treble clef, and then we switch to bass clef. Do you see that? Right before the end of the first measure of the second line. It's measure number 5. So there I have to switch my thinking and say, okay, now we're in bass clef and the bottom note is F and the top note is C. So if that's confusing to me, I would go back to the beginning of that measure, point to the first note and say F, then quarter rest, and now switch my thinking, F, C. Do it again. Go back to the beginning of that measure. F, quarter rest, F, C. Moving on, I'm still in the bass clef. E, C. Oh, that C is the same one. That looks interesting. The E is just one note lower from F. So let me go back to the beginning of measure 5. Okay, here we go. F, quarter rest. This is the switch to bass clef. Okay, here we go. F, C. I can see that the C is the same note, and then the F is going down one note, so that's E, C. And I would just do that a few times. It's a matter of getting familiar, okay? Getting familiar with the notes and not automatically saying, no, this isn't something I can do. All right? You do want to name the rests as well, because just because it's a silence doesn't mean there's nothing happening. Silence takes time. It takes space in music. If there was no silence in music, it would be intolerable. It would just be constant sound. You would not want to hear that. So silences, rests, are super important. Now, if we're looking at naming chords, okay, I want to show you measure 11. If you're having questions, please write them. So look at measure 11, left hand. I've got this. Sorry. Okay, so measure 11, we've got these notes, G, B, D, G. So I could point and say G, B, D, G. I can also say G major triad in root position. If you're not sure about this, get the chord book. It's on my website. G major. Okay, what's the next one? It's G, C, E, G. Okay, well, that's not G major. That's C major, but it's got the G on the bottom, right? So you could just say to yourself, oh, it's C major chord with the G on the bottom. Or you could say it's a C major chord in second inversion. It means the same thing. So you would say, okay, the first one is a G major triad with the root repeated up here. The second one is a C major triad starting on G and again repeated on top. Then we're going back to the G major triad and then the C major triad in the same way. There we go. We just went G major, C major, G major, C major. Okay? You can also go G, B, D, G, pointing. Both are very valid. You can do first to start, point and say the note names so that you know what notes are there, and then consolidate those and say, okay, that's a G major chord, that's a C major chord. All right, I'm going to check in with you guys and see if we're all together. All right. With point and say, what I struggle with is I've honed my memorization so well over the years, I soon have trouble visibly focusing on the individual notes. So when my brain gets lazy and starts calling out the sequence of note names from memory, but I'm working on it. Maybe you're just learning those notes really, do you mean when you're looking at the notes, you're not looking at them anymore, you're just saying what you remember it was? There's nothing wrong with that, because those two things go hand in hand. As long as you're still looking, identifying the notes. It is memorization, it is. Think about reading English. You memorize the letters, right? And then eventually you kind of memorize the shapes of words, and then you don't read letter by letter unless it's a really unusual kind of word that you never see, right? Like when children start to read, they go C-A-T, k-at, cat, k-at, cat. But adults don't do that anymore because we've memorized what cat looks like. It's okay to memorize, but if you want, what you could do, Herman, is you could do a little bit of sight reading every single day. Just get something super easy, whatever is easy for you, and just take a few measures of that thing per day. Point and say note names 1 or 2 times through, put it away. That will force you to focus on what's there, because it's not something that you're learning. It's not something you're going to come back to. You're literally grabbing. It doesn't even have to be easy. You can pick up any piece of music, pick one measure from it, and just do this and then move on. Okay? That will be retraining you. I just start blurring over the notes because I know what's coming next. Okay, so that's where sight reading. By the way, sight reading doesn't mean knowing how to read music. People always misuse that word. Sight reading is when you have not practiced a piece of music and you're just playing it. You know, like someone just put it in front of you and you play it. That's sight reading. That's not the same as reading music notation. So Herman, in your case, sight reading is going to be your ticket to, you know, wherever it is you want to go. Take anything that you have never played before, pick one measure from it. It'll probably take you a few minutes a day, maybe one. Point and say whatever you see there, and then move on. Just do this daily. You might even do it a few times. I don't know if you're at work, if you ever have like, you know, just time where you're not doing stuff. Take a, you know, or you can even look online, just sheet music of any song you want, and point and say the note names and the chord names and, you know, and the rest names. Yeah. So Herman, that's your assignment, and anybody else who wants to take this on. This will get you reading music so much better if you just do a tiny bit of sight reading every day. You don't even have to play it. Just point and say what you see there. Okay? Let's move on. And remember, as you have questions, just write them out. Okay. Point and count. All right. This is for the people who want to play with good rhythm, which should be everybody. Point and count. I did say, I think I told Regina, I think I told you, and I might have told Claudia, I think I'm going to do a rhythm workshop, because rhythm seems to be like one of those sticking points for people too. For now, we're not going to talk about that. That's going to be like a different kind of focus. But first, you just want to know how to actually count musical notation. You can count saying 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You could say 1, 2, 3, 4. It really depends on the situation and what you feel comfortable with. So let me go back to our specific example. All right, I'm going to pick one that looks kind of tricky to people, and it's going to be the last here. I'll use the very last measure so we can all focus on that. So if I look at the left hand, I see that there is a rest and then 4 notes that look the same rhythmically as one another. Notice I'm not even naming what they are. There's a rest, there's 3 notes that look like they're the same kind of note, and then there's 1 note that looks like a different kind of note, rhythmically speaking. And then if we look at the second half of the measure, that rhythm pattern is repeated. All right? So in this case, I'm using more than one practice step. I'm using like find the lookalikes. Yeah? Jan, this is in respect to what you were saying. I'm using find the lookalikes, and I'm going to do point and count. So I know that however I count the first half of the measure, I'm going to count the second half of the measure the same way, but of course it'll be different numbers because we're moving on. So in this particular case, we have 4 counts in each measure. So I would have to make sure that I count a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. And if I look at that first rest and those 3 groups of notes, I know that that has to take up 1 beat. The next note takes up another beat. It's a quarter note. Then the next group of rest plus 3 notes takes up one other beat, which is 3. And then the last note, quarter note, takes up 1 beat. That would be beat 4. If any of this is going above your head, check out my rhythm videos on YouTube. Basically, if you're in 4/4 time, which is also called common time because it's so common, it means that a quarter note is going to get 1 beat, and there's going to be the equivalent of 4 quarter notes in each measure, 4 beats in each measure. So the first beat here has a rest, and note, note, note. That's 1 beat. Okay, so I know that first rest is a 16th rest because I've learned it. There are things you just need to learn. And those next 3 notes are 16th notes. And if you've seen my pizza theory of rhythm, then just picture a pizza or a pie and cut it into 4 equal slices. That's what we're looking at here. In this case, the first slice is a rest, and the 3 next notes are the other 3 slices. So I would count 1 E and why do we say 1 E and That's just what we say. I don't know. 1 E and Then the next note is just a quarter note. It's going to get one whole pi to itself. 2 E and all by itself. Then we know that the next half of the measure is the same rhythmic repetition. 3 E and then the last note 4 E and So I would point and I would go through with a steady beat like this. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and You can't see me pointing, but just imagine every time I point, I'm pointing at the things that I spoke about. So let's see if you guys are with me. My experience with point and say is actually that I am talking faster. Can you explain that, Jan? I'm not sure I understand. Okay, while I wait for you to explain, I'll move on to tap and count. So I'm going to take that same section that I just did, and I'm going to tap and count. So, whoops. All right. You can see my hand here, right? Okay. So I'm going to take, it would be my left hand, so I'll use my left hand because I was looking at the left hand. So I know the first beat, 1, is a rest. So I lift my hand. Why? Because when I'm actually playing the keys, I'm going to be lifting my hand there. There's no sound. So 1 E and 2 E and So now I did the first 2 beats. I did the 16th rest, 3 16th notes, and then the quarter note. So 1 E and 2 E and I know the second half of the measure is the same. 3 E and 4 E and so if I do all that without stopping to chat, and you want to see if you can keep a steady beat here, okay? So I'll go kind of slow. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and You can combine that with a 3-coin game. Can I do it 3 times in a row correctly? Right? Or, lots of other things you can combine it with. But 3-coin would be good. You can then go faster. So you can do, the ramping up the speed. You could have it with the metronome, right? Use your metronome, buddy. So I'm going to pretend I'm the metronome here. I'm tapping my chest. This is the metronome. Actually, I'll go a little slower. So my metronome is going to be on the quarter note. So every time it clicks, it's a quarter note. Okay? So I would do 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and you might say, whoa, that's too fast. Okay, so slow down your metronome, buddy. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and so you see, you can combine getting faster with the metronome, with 3-coin game, all that stuff. Could I say the rhythm on the right hand? Okay, hold on 1 second, Claudia. Let's see. What is Jan saying? Better at immediate. Oh, I see. So you're making it. So Jan, what you're saying is when you do point and say note names, you get better at immediate note identification. So it's helping you to read better, if I'm understanding you correctly. Yes, Claudia, I'll tap and count the rhythm in the right hand, so you can see it. It's basically the same thing, kind of in reverse. If you see it, you've got first a quarter note, and then the 16th rest, 16th note, 16th note, 16th note. Okay, so it's kind of like a mirror image of the left hand part. So I'll do the right hand with the metronome, which is really my chest. Okay, so 1 E and 2 E and 3, E, and 4, E, and right? Again, you've got the repetition of the patterns. Got a quarter note, 16th rest, 3/16 notes. Second half of the measure. Quarter note, quarter rest, 3/16. The 16th rest, 3/16 notes. Getting tongue-tied. All right, let's check in. All right, Regina, is it necessary to use a metronome to learn rhythm? 2 professional musicians have told me to keep using my ear and develop an internal steady beat. After watching some of my videos on Facebook, is it... Okay, so Regina, what those musicians are telling you is not wrong. But my question for you is, how will you develop that feeling of the steady beat if you have nothing to compare it to? What if it's a piece you've never heard before? How will you know how the rhythm goes? So the advantage of having the metronome there is that it keeps you honest. Not that you're trying to cheat, but it shows you where you might be taking more time than you have, where you might be rushing, right? The metronome never lies. As much as I thought it did when I was a child, it wasn't the metronome's fault. It was my fault, right? When I was wrong. So what those musicians are telling you is correct. You want to develop an internal beat. But before you have done that, you need to go through the process of being able to feel and hear a beat and being able to understand how the notes of a particular song or a piece fit within those beats. And the fastest and most reliable way is to do it with a metronome. Lots of people think that listening to the metronome makes them mess up. No, it doesn't. It shows you where you have the weakness. The metronome doesn't make you mess up. Okay? You're welcome, Claudia. Anna, I have great coordination left and right hand. I know. It's amazing. It's almost like I play the piano. And have for a long time. Okay? All right. Does that answer your question, Regina? The thing is that people will give you all kinds of advice. And in my opinion, it's really good to listen to everybody and then run it through a filter. First of all, I want to look at who it is that's giving me the advice. Are they in a position to like understand what they're talking about, and have I seen that like their advice works for them? Number 2, are they talking about a particular situation only? And I'm not understanding that. I notice this happens a lot in pianists who are either wanting to study with me or are studying with me, or they ask questions on YouTube like, you said this, and I'm like, no, that was only for this particular case, not 100% of the time. Then the third thing you want to look at is, am I understanding correctly? Because we can only understand from our level of knowledge, you know? Imagine, like, I don't speak Chinese. So if someone spoke to me in Chinese, they could be saying the best thing I would ever hear, but I don't understand it because I don't have anywhere to put that knowledge, you know, that information. So somebody might be saying something to you, and maybe it's not in Chinese, maybe it's in the language that you speak, but because they're coming from a different perspective, a different world of knowledge than where you are, you're hearing something in a different way than they're saying. So be very careful about, you know, just like taking advice and saying, oh, this is exactly what they meant. You don't know what they meant. You don't know what you understood. You don't know if they were talking about a particular situation. You don't even know if that person knows what they're talking about to begin with. Okay? I'm not saying your friends are not, you know, great musicians. That's not it. This is a general, again, this is a general thing. Okay? All right. Yeah, Regina, you really want to learn stuff fast, which I love, and you do learn very fast. There's just so much to to playing the piano or, you know, learning to play music. And you have to give yourself the opportunity to like let it unfold. It cannot happen all at once. That's not how it works. Yeah. Side benefit of Metronome Buddy is he or she subtly helps you become comfy with a bit of extra stress. Absolutely. You got it right, Herman. Yep. If you're doing Not Your Mama scales, you notice that I added something there, which are like the backing tracks. There's music that you play with. I put in a drummer, and me playing accompaniment on the piano, and instead of just playing with the metronome, you get to play with the band, which is me. So that's also a way of, you know, keeping you steady. It's a different metronome buddy. It's me, Marina, but it's still keeping you a steady beat, right? So if you were ever going to play in a band, Regina, like if you were going to, you know, if your church has a band and you're learning a lot of church music and you went to play with them and you were not good at keeping a steady beat, or you allowed yourself kind of pauses where you need to figure out something that's tricky and the drummer's just going and the bassist is just going and the singer's going and you're kind of stuck in your own world, doesn't work. Okay? Just something else to think about. Yeah, I know. I'm doing it for Not Your Mama scales too. My goal. Oh, by the way, you guys, my surgery is scheduled October 13th. Because we had to do some tests, so I can't do it next week. But my goal is to have Not Your Mama scales 2 out before I go for surgery. So you'll have that feature, the backing tracks in that course as well. Okay. So Veronica, hi Veronica. In measure 17, what does the TR stands for trill? Here, let me show you. So you'll see that that same thing happens in measure 15, 17, and then measure 4. So trill basically means going back and forth between 2 notes. There's not an exact science to it. There's no number of notes you need to include. There's not even a certain rhythm for the trill or even what note to start on. If you how's that for an answer, Veronica? This is an art, okay? So let's look at the one in measure 17, the one that Veronica referred to. If you listen to very, very famous pianists play this piece, they're all going to interpret the trills differently. There's not one way to do it. So if someone tells you, I know this is a very common misconception. Someone says, "Oh, if it's a piece by Bach or Mozart, you start the note on the higher note." You start the trill on the higher note. If it's from Chopin, you start the trill on the lower note. Not necessarily. So don't listen to those blanket statements. So looking at measure 17, if you just play the notes in the right hand without the trill, it sounds like this. Right? I'll play it from the measure right before that, just so you can see how it goes into it. Sorry. That's what it is without the trill. And by the way, when you have a piece with trills in it, it's a really good idea to play it or practice it, several times without the trill. Because that way you get the bones of the music. And then you can add the trill. So the trill in this case is going to go back and forth between G and A. Let me move this so you can see my hand. Let's see. Okay. So if you play it without the trill, that's the rhythm. Those are the notes. You can play the trill's going to be between G and A. You can start on A, and you can just go back and forth 2 times, or you can do it several times, depending on how much time you have and how good your technique is, and also the piece itself. This is a very happy kind of piece, so it would not make sense to go. If you were playing a delicate Chopin piece, yeah. But in this case, you want it to be very energetic. As many times as you want. Or you can start on G. You can do it slowly. If you're not, if it doesn't feel technically doable for you, you just do a couple of times. Just go back and forth. Or, okay? Trills, you have to look at them specifically in the situation that you're talking about and your own skill level. Okay? Does that make sense, Veronica? All right. Next step is play and say. Again, one that people are like, I can't do this. It's very difficult. It's not difficult. You're just not good at it yet. Huh? But you're going to get good at it by doing it. That's the only way. So we'll look at a slightly different section. Let's do, I want to make sure you can see. Okay, let's do measure 15. I'll make it smaller so you can see my hand. Okay. Measure 15. I'm going to play and say the left-hand note names. But before I do that, of course, I have gone through and said, looked at the lookalikes. In this case, I can see every other note in this measure is going to be a D. Do you see it? Not the first note, but the second note, the fourth note. Every other note is a D. This guy. Well, that's easy. So I can just kind of put that into my automatic thinking. Every other note is going to be this guy. I'm going to call it D. All right. Then I can see that the first 4 group of notes is the same as the third 4 group of notes. See that? C, D, B, D. And then look at the third group. All right. Now, if I look at the second group and compare it to the fourth group, those are not the same. So those are, those I will have to think about if I'm playing and saying note names. But I still know that every other note is a D. Move my microphone so you can see. All right. So here we go. I'm going to play and say the note names in measure 15. Nice and slow. There's no hurry. C, D, B, D. A, D, B, D. I know this group is the same as the first one. C, D, B, D. Here's back to C, D. Well, that's the same as the previous group, the way it starts. And then it ends A, D. Do you see how many repetitions of that D there are there? And if you look at the measure before, again, every other note is D. So if you play and say, these few measures, you're going to get really good at reading that ledger line D up there. Okay? C, D. You can also sing the note names. C, D, B, D, A, D, B, D. You get it in your head faster. C, and so on. All right? Okay. That is play and say. If you have a rest, obviously you would not. Okay, let me show you. Measure 18. So we've got the 8th rest. 16th rest. B, D, G, B. By the way, when you're playing and saying note names, you don't even have to keep the right rhythm. So you might take time. If you're doing measure 18, you would say, okay, that's the 16th rest. B, D, G, B. Take your time. We're not concerned with rhythm when we're looking at the note names and the rest names and stuff like that. Okay? All right, how are we doing? So I'm playing the notes 3 times fast. Veronica, can you be more specific in what you're referring to? Oh, okay. The trill. There's no number. There's no set number. But yeah, the trill. You don't normally count out to the trill. It doesn't have a rhythm. So the way that you could learn to play trills. I think I have an exercise on YouTube that's called Slay Your Trills or something like that. That will help you get the technique for it. Of course, technique, it's not, you can't get good at one thing at technique. It doesn't work that way. Like, you have to learn how to use your body. But yeah, if you're not sure how to play a trill, the best how to play a particular trill in a piece, and you don't have a teacher to ask, you can post in piano practice tips and ask for help, or you can also look up a few performances of that piece and use your ear. Listen. One thing that's really, really funny to me is every once in a while on YouTube, somebody will comment, "This doesn't work. I had to keep watching and listening over and over. This is too hard." Guess what? That's how it works. You have to focus in on something. When I'm trying to learn a piece, like for example, Hotel California, in order for me to write it out, I even slowed it down in some places, like where that guitar solo was. I slowed it down to 0.5 speed, and I kept listening, like, what note are they going to? Over and over and over. And this is what I do for a living. So when I say watch a video, I don't mean watch it once and go, I don't know, that went too fast. Slow it down. If you can see the person playing, slow it down and look at what they're doing with their hands. This is how you learn. If you're not with a teacher, even if you're learning something on your own aside from the teacher. Okay, didn't you just say treble notes? Is this a test? Yeah, Herman, these are treble notes. Look, whoops. Hold on, let me see, where is it? Yeah, if you look at measure 18, you see that there is measure 17. It has a treble clef. You see it? It's telling you, hey, heads up. We're going up here. So we've got bass clef at the beginning of measure 17, and then at the very last thing of measure 17 is like, hey, hold on. What you're coming up to is now in the treble clef. Because Mozart wanted these notes. So if you're going from measure 17, so you're here. Whatever, pretend I did it well. Now, here goes up here. Could he have written that in the bass clef? Yeah, but you would hate reading that because it would be a bunch of ledger lines. If you're not sure what a ledger line is, it's like those added little lines above and below the staff that extend the staff. So did he have to write in treble clef? No, but we're so glad that he did because it's so much easier to read this. If it's on the staff, then it's a whole bunch of, ledger lines in the bass clef, right? So remember that reading music notation extends beyond just looking at the notes. You got to look at everything that's there. Herman, you didn't fail. You can just bring me an apple at the next lesson and I'll be fine. Okay. So, good. Moving on. Are you guys getting tired? Play and count. Now, once you've got the notes down, like you've pointed and you're familiar with them, you pointed and counted and tapped and counted, and then you've played and said the note names without rhythm. Then, once you've got that, you want to add the rhythm. So, going back to our example. All right, let's say we were doing the last measure here we'll do the right hand this time. So let's pretend that we've already pointed and said the note names, played and said the note names, pointed and counted, tapped and count. Now we're going to include everything as we play and count. So you want to go nice and slow so that you can be on time and have the right notes. Right notes being the notes that you want to play. In the case of classical music, we don't have the opportunity to interpret it however we want in terms of notes and rhythms, the same way that we do when we're playing pop music or jazz or blues. So in classical, playing it right means playing what the composer wrote. Okay, so looking at the last measure, I'm going to play and count. 1, E and 2, E and 3, E and 4, E and and then you would do whatever speed is right for you, but you got to keep it steady. All right, then here comes metronome buddy, right here on my chest. So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and You can even do that with your eyes closed. Let me move this so you can see that I am not lying to you. If you have memorized the rhythm, okay? 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and you can do that with the 3-coin game. You can have noise in the background. Lots of practice steps going on at the same time. All right, so playing count. When you're doing playing count, you've got a lot of things to be responsible for. Correct notes, correct rhythm, of course, the fingering that you've decided on. Generally, as more of a, how do I put this? You can use fingering that feels good in the moment, or you can practice fingering so that it's the same every time. It depends on your skill level, and it also depends on how difficult a thing is. So, for example, in this part of the piece, you don't want to wing that. When I was working on it, I decided what fingering I was going to use. I wrote it in, and that's what I used. But in other parts, I would just play whatever it happens. Okay? Ready. Hey, we're getting through these really fast. It helps you to circle where clef changes are. Yeah, it does help. It's really good. Just make sure whatever notations you make on your music, do it in pencil. You might change your mind. You might decide at a certain point, like you have too many notations, and erase them. Clef change, totally new concept to me. Circling sounds like a good idea. See, Herman, always learning. Vera, that is really hard for me, even more if it's 1 E and So Vera, you might, I think I'm seeing that the technique workshop is pretty necessary. You might want to enroll in that. But again, I will say it's hard probably because you're not doing it consistently. Or you're starting with pieces that are a little bit too advanced. Again, take something really easy and practice just pointing and counting, tapping and counting. You just want to make it a skill that is kind of running in the background. If you're having to focus on it every time, it means you haven't internalized that particular skill. For example, I know you're a scientist and this may not apply to you, but if you had to figure out a certain let's see, I did take chemistry, but I forgot, what are they called? For a certain formula for or whatever, like H2SO4 is, I think it's sulfuric acid, right? If every time you wanted to notate sulfuric acid, and if I'm wrong, let me know. If every time you had to go like, okay, now what is it? It's H. I know there's a hydrogen. I know there's oxygen. No, you just memorize it. H2SO4. It's like in your background. It's the same thing with rhythms. You kind of start understanding like rhythmic groupings, which is what we'll work on in the rhythm workshop. Yeah, my boot camp is very good for rhythm. I find that the people who do the boot camp or instant piano and then don't continue that way of practicing are the ones that have a harder time. So I can't come to your house and make you do the work. After you finish the course, you actually have to continue working the same way that you learned in the courses. Okay? All right. Does that make sense, Vera? It's something that you have to practice. I did the instant piano. Maybe I should repeat this part with one and yeah, it's not even about like doing the course again, because I have that for free on YouTube, my rhythm videos. But I noticed that people were still not understanding it, so I was like, okay, let's do it in a course where I practice with you and you understand how to practice this, and then you have to do it. Vera, the way I would start with you is just take watch those free videos, or if you're still in instant piano, go back to those. By the way, if you are in a course and your expiration and your enrollment has expired after 2 years and you need to go back and do something, just send me an email. I'll put you back in there. Okay. All right. I never understood rhythm until I did the boot camp. That's great, Claudia. You're learning all the time. I've been doing all this stuff in the Albert's recital book. The material is so basic and childish, it's embarrassing. But childish, it's embarrassing. But it doesn't come easy, so I believe. Yeah. So Claudia, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use you as the example. Claudia has taken piano lessons with another teacher for a few years, and she's really gifted, and she has a natural ability, and she's super hardworking. Like, she'll take notes from watching the recordings of our one-on-one lessons, and she'll show them to me. So it's not a matter of not doing the work or, anything like that. But her previous teacher didn't teach her like the basics about learning music. And so when she started studying with me, I went with whatever she wanted to learn, because I didn't know what she knew or she didn't know. I could tell that she could play. But we noticed that after a while it was getting kind of frustrating for her. It was because there was all these holes in her knowledge. So I asked her if it was okay that we like put aside real music, cool music for a while, the music she wants to play, and just look at like Alfred's Basic. And those pieces are, basic, and they're teaching tools. And we're using those pieces, and she agreed to it, just to learn structures, just to learn functions, not to enjoy playing the piece, although some of them are kind of, not that bad. And it shouldn't be embarrassing, Herman, because what you're doing is you're like constructing the foundation and the structure, and then you can, on top of that, it's gonna be so easy to learn the pieces you do want to play or the songs you do want to play. So if you are finding, Vera, that you are having trouble with rhythms, go to very, very easy pieces and just practice rhythms on that. It's just a tool. Like I always say, it's just a sit-up. When you are going out for dinner and you're wearing your beautiful dress, you're not doing sit-ups out, but you're showing the results of the sit-ups, right? Your beautiful abs that fit beautifully into the dress. So when you're working on these easier pieces, you're doing the sit-ups or whatever, push-ups you're doing. So what you gain from doing those, you can apply to the pieces that you want to play. Yes, I started to practice it more already. Would you do this just for difficult part and pieces? At first, Vera, I would do it all the way through. But of course, in small sections. That's, another thing I talk about. Don't take a whole piece or, like even a page necessarily, depending on how hard the piece is and how familiar you are with it and your level. But small, I mean, you guys, seriously, small things build up so quickly. So I would do it for now, Vera, on everything. Just so if you can do it with the easy stuff, the harder stuff's going to get easier. If you just wait to do it with the harder stuff, it's going to feel like a chore. It's going to feel like something extra that you're doing. Just make it a habit for now. You'll know when you don't need to do it anymore. I always tell my students that when I ask them to stop counting out loud, it's because they don't need to anymore. They've already internalized it. Okay? All right. Claudia, I'm so glad we did that, Marina. I'm really learning a lot without feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. And Vera, I remember telling you, you and I were discussing, I think on Facebook, that most adults do quit after 2 years, or they back way, way off. And I really think it's because number one, they don't realize how much goes into playing the piano, thanks to our society saturated with instant results type of thinking. But also because they don't learn the processes. They just want to learn pieces, and it doesn't work that way. So I'm so glad that you're coming back to it and, starting to really examine how you're applying your desire to play to actually getting the work done. Okay. I still refuse to dress up in a gown to play Alfred's Purple Cow. We'll see, Anna. We'll see what you want to do. I'm not making, but Anna and I decided we're going to also use those very, very easy pieces to learn the structures of playing. Okay, moving on. A metronome buddy. Do I need to talk about Metronome Buddy? I don't think so. We love Metronome Buddy. And my metronome's name really was Harry, Harry, in college. I now don't know where that metronome is, but I do have a metronome app on my phone, and I use it when I'm practicing the stuff that I'm going to record for YouTube. I still use it. Okay. And then how to use the metronome. If you want, I can make a little mini course on that, but basically what I said in the book should be enough. If you really have a hard time with metronome, schedule like a 15-minute session with me. We'll knock it out. Don't worry. Okay, it's more like a block, a mental block. Like, I don't want to do it. You may not think it is, but that's what it is, mostly. Okay, chunking. All right, looking at the music again. I already kind of did chunking here for you. If we're looking at the left hand here in measure 11, you can see that we've got, right? Bunch of notes, one after the other. So you can chunk each group of 4 like this. Okay? You could even chunk them, split up a different way. You can do chunk 2 and then 2 like this. You can chunk 1 plus 3. You can chunk 3 plus 1. You can combine this with eyes closed. You could do metronome buddy. So you could say, all right, I understand that this is the chord. So at first there's no beat, right? All right, the next one is, let's see now, what is it? It's this. Okay, I know that the next one is like the first one. So let me see, where is it here? Okay, and then I know the next one is like the second one. Okay, once you've got that, get that metronome there. So you could do like 2 clicks for each chord. I'm just making this up. You do it however you want. Make it a game, okay? So each chord is going to have 2 clicks. Here we go. I'm going to chunk 4. You could say, well, that was pretty easy. Let me speed it up. Okay, so I explained the reasons for this in the book, so I'm not going to go over the reasons. But you can split up your chunking however you want. If you're looking at measure 4, you can even do chunks here, okay? I'm chunking every 2 notes. Sounds like a car alarm. So I know it's just the same 2 notes going back and forth. When you are chunking, I recommend that you figure out fingering for yourself. Write it in so that when you're repeating these chunks, basically we're like memorizing. I always say this to Claudia, we're memorizing choreography. You know, like a dancer memorizes, okay, I go these steps here and I turn, and on this beat I do that. That's basically what we're teaching our bodies at the piano. So you want to learn the choreography with the same fingering you're going to be using when you play it, right? So if you're chunking and you use a different fingering than when you play, doesn't make sense. Okay? Let's see. I'll scroll and then I'll see if you have any questions. Your metronome course is very good too. I have a metronome course? Are you talking about, are you talking about a video? Okay, Herman, sorry, I need to sign off. Get a couple hours of sleep before. Oh, okay. All right. Well, you can watch us later, Herman. Thanks for joining. September, I've reached my 2 years anniversary without quitting. Yay! Good for you, Vera. All right. So now we're going to do the opposite, kind of the opposite of chunking, which is arpeggiating. Okay? So if we go back to our... Okay. I'm looking at measure 8 and 9 here in the left hand. Okay. You can see that measure 8 has... Oh, let me move so you can see. There. It's got an octave here, and then it's got a third here, and then... Oh, it's an F and A. Sorry, it's kind of blurry on my end. Okay, so it's this, this, and this. For now, we're ignoring the rest. We're ignoring rhythms, all that. So those are the notes. I'm going to arpeggiate, means I'm going to play one note at a time. So you can arpeggiate from the bottom up. There's the first one. There's the second one. There's the third one. You just kind of loop them. Okay? You can also arpeggiate from the top down. Right? And you would do this in just small sections. With repetition, so you become familiar. So what you're doing is you're like looking at the individual components, which is the opposite of what we just did with chunking, where we like group everything, right? So once you've got that, then you would play it the way it's written. Okay, because you taught your fingers like where are those notes. Now these, I chose this because it's very, very easy to see. It's very simple, and but if you have like a chord with a bunch of notes in it, like, you know, maybe it's that, you could, you know, practice like looking at every note and teaching your fingers where are those notes. Here too, I would choose a fingering and I would stick with it for you. As you get better and better, you might change your fingering, but at the very least you understand what's happening with the chords, with the notes within the chords. Oh, my pedal chords. Okay. Yeah, that was a fun one to make. All right, arpeggiating is done. As you have questions, pop them up for me. I know this is a really long class, but remember, you can come back to it later. All right, grouping. This one's super, super important. And Tuan, I don't know if you're still here, but we use this a lot when you're doing your Chopin. Okay, so grouping is different from chunking. And if you have the book, you understand why. So let's say that... Okay, I'm going to use the very first two measures in the right hand. Let me move this so you can see. Okay, so the first two measures, just to reiterate, sound like this. Okay, but that is made up of different groups of notes. So for example, the first group I would see is the first three notes, which outline a C major triad. So I'm going to group those together in my mind. C, E, G, C major triad is the first measure. And I would just practice that first group. Even though I'm practicing two measures, practicing the first group there. Okay, the next group, I would do just one note here. I'll tell you why later. So I would just do the one note here. This would be group 2. So I would go... I practice group 1 and 2. So this is slightly different from plus 1 because we're not just adding one thing, we're actually adding a group each time, okay? Think of it as an extension of plus 1. So group 1, group 2 just happens to be one note here. I'll tell you why it's group 2. Because my thumb is shifting to a new position. So already that's like a new pattern. And the reason it's not part of the next thing, I'll show you right now. So if I'm on group 2 and I'm doing the next 3 notes, C, D, C, I'm thinking of that as one motion, as one chunk of thought. Right? So this is a group by itself because ba-da-da, it just goes between 2 notes. I would not put the B into that group because it's like a different thing happening. That's why it's by itself. So group 1 is this. I'll practice it till I know group 1 really well with my eyes closed, metronome, all that stuff. There's so many things you can add, right? But I'm just looking purely at this practice step. Okay, group 2. And you don't even have to do it with the right rhythm. You could just do, just to start. Okay, now I'm going to do groups 1 and 2 and add group 3. Wrong rhythm. It's okay. Group 1, group 2, group 3. Once you've got that, then you want to figure out what the rhythm actually is. So in this case, it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and. But I took that idea and I extracted, things from it, like bunches of things, groups, and I input it into my body, to my mind, like, hey, this thing that looks like it's 2 measures is actually 3 groups. And you might have places where the groups can be determined in different ways. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're taking time to analyze it, to work around the thought, and to teach yourself in small chunks of information. Okay, let's go back to you guys. Yeah, there you are, Tuan. Hey. All right, so that is the grouping. Altered rhythms. Okay, and if you've done any of my technique courses, you are a pro at this. Let's look at altered rhythms in this case. I'm going to look at the right hand where we talked about the sequences. I'm just going to look at the very first one, although you can do it with all of them. So notice that the first one is, right? It's 8th note, and then the rest are all 16th notes. Okay, so altered rhythm, I could do long, short, long, short. I'm going to ignore what Mozart wrote, and I'm just going to make an exercise out of it. Long, short. Okay, short, long. I could do, let's see, what else did I tell you guys? Okay, short, short, long. Oh, sorry, long, short, short. I did the wrong fingering. Okay, then short, short, long. And you don't have to play it as fast as I'm doing it. What you're doing is you're breaking up, again, your thought pattern. You're not just going by rote. You're teaching yourself to actually understand what is happening there. And then when you play it the way it's written, it's easy. And I wrote all the different reasons for doing this in the book. Sing it, baby. All right. The one that nobody wants to do. And then when they do it, they're like, whoa, that's kind of helpful. I'm going to do Sing It, Baby with, let's see, I'll do it with the right hand starting in measure 18. So I know how this goes, but let's pretend I didn't. I would first play it to hear the melody. Okay, so that's measure 18 plus the first note of measure, of measure 19. So, okay, now I'm going to play it, and I'm going to sing it. I'm going to sing it down here, because I don't want to sing it up there. Okay, so, bum, ba, 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 bum, ba, 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 bum. What if you're singing it and you can't match, you don't know how it goes? Very common. So, you can play it up here and still sing it down. It's okay. So you could sing one note at a time. Bum, 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 bum. You could do it while you're playing. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. You could play it, sing it, play it, sing it. Bum, ba, 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 bum, ba, 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 bum. Or you could just walk around the house singing it, like you sing any song, right? Bum, ba, 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 bum, ba, 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 bum. When you're walking around the house singing a song, how do you know what to sing? Who can answer first? When you just, if you're not listening to the radio, you're just humming a song or singing a song, how do you know what to sing? Yes, Kathy, I'm so glad that works for you and you're using it. It's awesome. So how do we know what to sing? If we're not listening to a radio and we're singing a song that we know. I do this a lot, actually. Do you mean singing, Vera? You walk around singing the pieces that you're playing? It's inside of you. How does it get inside of you, Claudia? Usually what I have been practicing. Yeah. How do you remember what you've been practicing? How does it get inside of you? It's a really obvious answer. And when it's that obvious, usually people are like, don't even see it. Because it's so obvious. It's in your brain. How does it get in your brain? You hear it in your head? How do you hear it in your head, Vera? It's so obvious, you guys. How do you remember the melody, Veronica? Repetition, singing. Yeah, you first have to become familiar with it. You hear it repeatedly. Yeah. Yes. Listening to it a lot. The songs that you can sing off the top of your head. Oh, can't say, can you see? I've heard that so many times. I used to live right next to a baseball stadium. I'd hear it every day, almost for months at a time, right? I mean, obviously it's the national anthem, but first you got to put it in there by listening to it a lot. Yeah, you can listen multiple times on YouTube. The repetition, Jerry, that you're talking about is you hear it as you're playing it, right? So that's how. So if you want to be able to sing the music that you play without even having to play it, like I can do, right? I can take a piece of music and just like sing it, and then the next step would be to play it. It's the same thing. But before you can get to that level, you have to practice like this. Get yourself used to reading music and hearing it in your head and reproducing it. Listen on YouTube. You listen to yourself playing. You can even record yourself playing and listen to it repeatedly. Okay? That's how you get good at this. If you try it a few times and you go, oh, you know what, I just can't do this, you haven't really put in the effort. Okay? Yeah. So the next step from that is imagine that. So you can do this if you're on an airplane, and you take out your music, and instead of singing bum 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 bum, you hear it in your head. You can't hear what's in my head, but right now I'm going. Okay, so you can do that. You can get better at this. At first, it's a little bit hard. You can get better at it by actually singing it out loud. Okay? All right. And then as you're playing, let's say you are as you're hearing it in your head, let's say you are in an airplane or somewhere else, then you just kind of like, play bum ba 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 bum ba 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 bum ba 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 bum. This is what I used to do when I was a child, and we were driving to concerts where I would have to participate or competitions. I'd be sitting in the back seat, nervous, jumping out of my skin, but closing my eyes and just hearing the music and playing it. Okay, and I hope you're not nervous while you're doing it, but it's super helpful. Listen and look. Okay, this is where YouTube is really helpful. So you take your sheet music, you listen to someone play it, and you literally like follow along. You take your finger and follow along. If you have trouble following along, pause, go back. You can put the music at 0.75 speed. It'll sound a little bit warped. That's okay. It works for our purposes. And go along. This is, again, feeding information to yourself in a completely different way than what we imagine as practicing, which is, just moving our fingers at the piano. That's not all there is to practicing, and you know that because you've read the book. And this is not a waste of time, and it's actually something you can do, again, when you're not at a piano. It's very, very helpful. Okay. So, next thing, pick your spot. If you always start at the beginning of a piece, not the best way, right? So after you've made your map, you can decide, I'm going to start at let's say you're learning, that guy, right? And you say, I want to start at the very end. I don't have it here, and I don't remember right now. I'm thinking about too many things. But I want to start at the coda, the very, very end, which is kind of the hardest part in some ways. So you can pick that spot to start practicing that day. The next day, you might continue to practice that spot, or you might pick a different spot. Don't feel that you have to make one section perfect before moving on to the next section. Think of it as your health, the health of your body, right? You don't first work on I don't know, or maybe you do. Let me pick a different example. Or maybe I don't even need one. Let's just say that you do not have to perfect one spot of your piece before moving on. Think of it as like a world. Like growing a garden. There you go. That's better. You don't wait to grow your tomatoes before you start growing your green beans. Just kind of tilling the soil. You work a little bit here, a little bit there. Water this guy, prune that guy. Think of your piece like a garden. That's a great analogy. I love it. Okay. Pick your spot and close your eyes. We've already talked about it. It's super... Claudia, Tuan, Regina, we've done it too. Yep, Anna, we've done it. All my students, I say, okay, now play this. Okay, now play with your eyes closed. And the first thing is like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, do it. And yeah, you might hit a wrong note here or there, but overall, after you get used to playing with your eyes closed, it's not that big a deal. And it really adds another level of comfort and feeling confident. Comfort and confident. That's a huge part of being able to perform, right? When you can play something with your eyes closed, and you've done it with a 3-coin game or with Metronome Buddy, and then you open your eyes and you play it, you just feel like you have this handled, you don't feel insecure about it. All right, so give me some feedback whenever you have questions. I know we're going kind of long, but we're almost there. I feel like 2 hours is a really great... whoops, what happened? I lost my file. Let me... Okay, there we go. You can do close your eyes with one hand or two hands, or lots of different ways. Ramp it up. Okay. Most people want to play too fast right off the bat. They think it's boring to play slow, and that it's boring to get faster a little bit at a time. But that's the only way to do it. That's enough said. You don't want to go really slow and then put your metronome really fast. Okay? Wasting time. Don't do that. Pushing the limit. This is one of my favorites, actually. It's kind of a more advanced practice step, but you can do it with anything. So once you've reached your tempo that feels good to you, you want to add a little bit of the overload principle. So you're going to ask yourself to do more during practice than what is actually necessary, so that when you do the normal way, it feels so easy. So one way to do that is to practice just a little bit too fast, knowing that that is too fast, because what that does is it has you process the information mentally faster and your fingers move faster than is necessary, so that when you pull it back, then it feels like you have all the time in the world to play it. You guys still with me? Practice your performance. Jan, is pick your spot recommended before you have gone through the whole piece, or is it better for the... I would do that from the very first practice session, and also as you're refining, both. So don't start learning a piece from the beginning. In fact, Tuan and I are working on a Chopin piece, and we haven't even played the beginning yet. We're working we went to the kind of the ending, and we did like the difficult runs first. Yeah? So then when we actually play the easy parts and we get to the difficult runs that happen at the end, it's already done. There's nothing to work on. Yeah? Thanks, Claudia. All right, practicing your performance. So we know that during practice, like we learn a piece and we fix our mistakes, all that stuff. Yeah, Tuan. But there has to come a point. Okay, if you're just practicing in the traditional way and you never practice your performance, the instant someone is there, even if that someone is a camera and you have to perform, you're doing something brand new. How good are we at doing something brand new? Not very good, even the simplest things, right? And then piano is not a simple thing. So if you've never practiced your performance for a piece, and then you want to perform it for someone, it's 100% not going to feel good. And most of the time, you're going to make mistakes and things like that, because it's not something that you're used to doing. So practice your performance. You sit down, and by the way, you can do this before the piece is already learned. Let's say you've worked on, if we're working on this Mozart sonata, let's say you've worked on the A section. You have it pretty well learned. Practice performing it, meaning actually walk to the piano. You might even bow. I used to make my students do that. Sit, collect your thoughts, play that part of the piece. No matter what happens, you keep going, because in a performance, you don't stop and fix things. That's not how we do it. So you go through, and you can make note of what you made wrong or whatever. You can also record yourself, so you don't have to remember anything. You can just watch it, okay? And then from practicing that performance, do it several times. Stand up, bow, go out, come back, bow, sit, play that again. Performing, not practicing the traditional way. And as you're recording yourself, then you can watch and see how well you did. Eventually, you might want to bring your dog in the room, or a neighbor, or somebody like very low pressure, your significant other, and say, I just want you to sit there. You can be on your phone. I don't really care. In fact, if you don't listen to me, that's great. Just be in the room and you practice your performance again. Then you can take it to the next level. Okay, this time bring a couple of people and say, would you please sit and give me your attention? That sort of thing. So you're like leveling up on like the, I hate to use this word, but like the pressure of the situation, right? Okay, very, very important. Don't just practice to correct mistakes or to learn. Okay. Okay, so moving on. Record yourself. I just talked about it. The time when I started recording myself in college, that particular semester, oh my gosh, I got so good so fast. The other students in my program were like, what have you been doing? Have you been practicing like 20 hours a day? So now I've been recording myself every single time and listening. All right, 3-coin game, super simple. I have an entire video about it, plus the book. You can do 4-coin, 5-coin. You don't have to use coins. You can use coasters, like Claudia uses, whatever, pencils, anything. Doesn't matter, okay? But it is important to like physically move an object. It does something for us. Yeah, Anna, it's so true. Like, my favorite kinds of gigs to play are the ones where nobody's really listening. And then I just get to enjoy, you know? So, yeah, just having someone in the room and literally telling them, don't listen to me. Do something else, but just be in the room, just so I know there's a human here. Okay, 3-coin game. We all know it. We all love it. It works like magic. Do not discount this one. +1. Okay, I have an entire video about this one, but just real quick, if I'm doing +1 on this Mozart, I'm going to do measure 14 just randomly. And I'm going to do hands together. You don't have to, notice I don't talk about if it's right hand, left hand. You could do right hand by itself, you could do left hand by itself, or both hands. So if I'm doing +1 with just the right hand, measure 14. I play the first thing. That felt pretty good. I don't need to do it again. Okay, now I'm going to play the first thing and the second thing. We don't care about the rhythm. That felt pretty good, but I want to do it again just to make sure. Okay, now I'm going to add the next thing. Do that again. Now I'm going to add the next thing. Well, that's a tied note, so I'm just going to hold it. So what's the next actual note that happens? Is A. So that feels pretty good. I'm going to add one more, +1. Okay, if I'm going to do that hands together, +1. I'm going to do that again. I'm not adding any more. That feels good. I'm going to +1. Do that again. Okay, it feels good. I'm going to add the next thing. I literally practice like this in some sections of my pieces. It works so fast. So fast. You can use it for learning. You can use it for refining. Okay? Another, like, insanely helpful one. Okay. Hold it right there. Hold it right there is different from +1. So let's say I'm playing this measure 14, okay? Let's pretend I'm playing, let me see here. Okay. No, actually, let me do measure, the very last measure of the page. So let's say I'm playing this, and I'm gonna make a mistake intentionally, just to like show something that might happen. I don't know where this note goes. Okay, so I know that I need to figure out where the next thing is here. So I could do +1, but I want to do hold it right there because the rest of it is pretty good. So I'm going to play what I just did. This all feels good. And now I need to figure out what is the next note in the left hand. Okay, that's a B. I'm going to play it and hold it. Okay, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to come to that B and hold it. So it's like I'm shining a spotlight on it and just looking at it. That's a B. All right. Okay. Now from here, once I have this note, let's say, then I know, okay, that's just it's a B chord, B minor chord. So I already know where that note is. I don't need to hold it right there anymore. I can move on. There it is. Okay. Hold it right there. You might need to repeat during several practice sessions. Usually one practice session on a trouble spot or something that's difficult is not going to handle it. You'll come back the next day and practice it again, but it'll be better. It'll be better every time, and then eventually you don't have to do that practice step again. Okay. +1 has gotten me through some really difficult Yeah! I'm so glad you're using it, Kathy. It's absolutely true. Use it. Okay, are we good with hold it right there? Background noise, pretty self-explanatory. I do it all the time. All the time. I just have some stupid thing on my computer, like a old TV show or something that I don't need to pay attention to. I don't want to have music because that's just competing. Sometimes I'll listen to like talks, like YouTube that just talks and play. So what I'm doing is I'm learning to tune out other things. Okay? It's background noise. Just passing by, one of my favorites. I think, Anna, you call this one the drive-by. I'm from Los Angeles. Drive-by means something different to us. It usually involves a crime. Anyway. Just passing by. Oh, I'm just passing by the piano. Let me sit down and play just this one thing. I'm not going to work on it. I'm just going to play it and I'm going to walk away. Just passing by. Or if you're Anna, drive by. Forget about it. Don't practice that thing for a few days. Sometimes we just have to let our body process what we've been putting into it. Okay? Only works if you've actually been practicing something pretty diligently. Give yourself time away. It's good. It's good. Don't have to practice every single day. All right. Those are all the practice steps that are in the book. And I know there's a little delay, so I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes and see if you have any questions. You can keep watching this. I think it takes a while for YouTube to process it and make it available. I put it on YouTube so that it will always be there. One of the reasons I have a time limit on my courses is because the platform is first of all, we don't know how long a particular platform is going to be in existence. For all we know, that company might go out of business. And if I've promised you lifetime access, you're not going to be happy with me if it's no longer there. And then also, I want you to do the courses and move on. They're not meant to each course is meant to teach you a specific skill or give you knowledge. And then you use it for your studies, okay? Also, some course platforms charge the course creators by how many students are in the course. So if I have a bunch of students enrolled and they're not even looking at the courses, it's costing me money for nothing, right? So anyway, if you have purchased a course and you didn't get to finish it in the 2 years, just write to me. We'll take care of it, okay? Don't worry about that part. But there are like really good reasons why I don't. Plus, I from what I understand from the course creator's perspective, the legal aspects haven't quite caught up to it. So like, okay, whose lifetime are you guaranteeing? Is it the lifetime of the course creator? So like, if I die, like you guys lose access. Is that what I mean by lifetime access? Or the life of the platform? So if that platform goes out of business, like you also lose access, or your life. Or can your inheritors come back and say like, no, this is a lifetime course, means for all eternity. Like there's so many legal aspects that are not identified in when people say lifetime access. It's just a selling proposition, but it doesn't mean anything, okay? Tuan, such an honor and privilege to get to learn from. Oh, Tuan, you are so sweet to me all the time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Alrighty, so questions, comments, you can ask questions in Piano Practice Tips. If you think this was a really good course and you want to recommend other people, or you want me to be able to use your reviews as part of my marketing, you can post your takeaways from this. Like, this is what I got after I took this course in Piano Practice Tips, so other people can read it and I can quote you on my website. Slowly but surely, on my website is getting better and better, and I use your words, your experiences to help other people make the decision to buy my courses so that I can keep doing this. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you. All right, thanks everybody for coming. Thank you so much for buying my products. You are the people who purchased before it was even released, this book. So it shows me that you like the work that I do and you trust me to come through for you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you in Piano Practice Tips. You're very welcome, Kathy. Thank you, Vera. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah. So thank you so much for your feedback. I would really appreciate it if you would do your feedback in a public place where other people can see it. And if they're wavering, then your review will help them go ahead with their purchase. Thank you, Anna. Claudia, best course ever. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. And yeah, thank you so much, Veronica. All right. I'll see you again. All our places. Thank you, Sir Jay. I call you on Sir Jay. Thank you, Diane. Always here with me. I went for practice, but can relate to any trouble. Yeah, absolutely right. All right. Thank you for staying with me. I will see you, around. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.